Thank you. In the 18th century, it was difficult to be an immigrant in the United States. In fact, in the 18th century, it was also even more difficult if you were a deaf, mute child with physical handicaps and difficulties. See, that was the reality of a guy named Andrew Clemens. When he was 5 years of age, he developed this brain fever, which today we know is encephalitis. And it left him deaf, left him with physical disabilities, which in the reality of the 18th century, there wasn't a whole lot of hope, resources, anything available for someone like that, for a future for them. Well, one day, growing up in Iowa, he noticed the various colors of sandstone in the cliffs. And he started playing with these different colors of sandstones and placing them into the bottles and shaping them and looking at them and layering different colors together. And suddenly people started paying attention to what, in fact, he was starting to create. He was actually creating a brand new art form called sand art. And here's some pictures of what he had the capacity to do. Those aren't paintings. That's sand art inside of bottles. Who would think someone in the 18th century that was a deaf-mute child with physical handicaps and difficulties could do some of the most amazing pieces of art? In fact, as recent as 2012, one of his sand art bottles was sold for $45,000. You see, Andrew discovered something that you and I need to embrace, and it's this. You have a gift, and your gift is needed in the world. He understood that. He embraced that. He moved toward that. He would find little instruments that he would discover in the garage that he had, in the shed, and he would take these little instruments and he would figure out how to perfect his artwork, because he understood that he had a gift, and his gift was in fact needed in the world. And when I look at this, let me go back. I don't know if you can see this, especially from the back of the room, but he fully embraced his obstacles. In fact, if you see the bottom of every single bottle that he created, this one says, put up by A. Clemens, deaf, mute. He claimed his obstacle. He turned his obstacle into his opportunity, into his brand. And when we talk about, you say, well, what does this have to do with podcasting? Well, I think we could say it a different way. Maybe you're here today, and I saw some of you have yet to get your podcast launched. Some of you are just launching it. You know, the thoughts that you think will dictate the actions that you take. And if you're thinking bad thoughts, if you're thinking limiting thoughts, if you're thinking negative thoughts, it's going to lead to delay, distraction, procrastination, and you're just going to doubt. And that doubt is going to lead to no action. But here's what you and I should walk away with today. And we should be more convinced today as we walk away, we should be empowered with this thought. You have a message, and your message is needed in the world. Because if you don't say it, it may never be said. If you don't write it, it may never be read. If you don't record it, it may never be heard. You have a message, and your message is needed in the world. I love this quote from Thomas Edison, who said, if we did all the things that we were capable of doing, we would literally astound ourselves. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. When I talk to you about 5 things podcasters should stop saying and what to say instead, what I'm referring to is 5 limiting beliefs, 5 things that go on in our heads, 5 myths that we need to move away towards and move towards something else instead. Now, before I jump into these 5 sayings, I'm going to go through quite a few slides pretty quickly. And if you're wanting to take notes or you're wanting to write it down, or if I move it and advance it too quickly and you don't write it down and you're frustrated, I've been there. I've put this whole presentation slide on my website. It's at bloggingyourpassion.com/podcastflorida. And you can get the presentation slides. I've also put together a PDF that's called the Blogging Success Pyramid. It's basically the pathway I took from blogging, starting a blog in 2009, to becoming a full-time blogger. And also, I have a course that I sell for $97 that I want to give to everybody here for free if you're interested in starting a membership site. It's actually a video course along with some of the emails that I sent and the timeline that I took to go from an idea to a membership site in 90 days. And so all that's available to you guys if you'd like to grab that. Again, just go to bloggingyourpassion.com/podcastflorida. All right, so let's jump into these. Here's saying number one. I'm just going to follow the money. What I was most encouraged about hearing you guys talk is there was passion behind these podcasts. And oftentimes, and I'll get ready to tell you a story of myself where this was what I was about and how it didn't work for me. But it's so easy for us, especially if we want to make, now I know some people here, your podcasting is a hobby, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But there's some here who you like this idea of podcasting to move into something that you would consider to be your dream job, that dream business where you could work from home and work on your own terms. And that's certainly possible. But I want to throw caution to the wind that it's not about just saying, well, what's going to make me the fastest buck? What's going to make me the dollar? I started blogging in 2009. And about 2010, I started being able to see some success for what I was doing. And one of the ways that I was earning income was Google AdSense. I had ads on my blog, and I got to the point where I was earning close to $800 and getting ready to top $1,000 every single month. And I thought, man, I need to figure out how can I scale this thing, you know? I had a day job that I was doing. I was doing this thing on the side, but my passion was over here. I don't know if anybody identify with that. And so immediately I was like, you know, the only obstacle is money, right? That's what we think. You know, if I just get more money, then I can just do what I want to do. And so I had some friends that were earning $10,000 a month with Google AdSense. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? Tell me. So they were telling me about what they were doing. This is back in 2010. For those of you that are the Google algorithm people, and you know about the penguin and the panda, and it's not the zoo that we're referring to and all of that stuff. But there was a time where finding good keywords, and I had a lot of low competition and a lot of high volume, and if you could find those, you could really drive a lot of traffic. And so they said they were setting up these niche sites on topics they knew nothing about, and they were writing these articles about topics they knew nothing about, and they were putting them up there, and just for the only sole purpose of getting people to click on their ads. And I thought, well, I guess I'll do that because that's what this successful person's doing, so that's what I'll do. And so I've actually went back. Anybody know what the Wayback Machine is? I went online, you go to the Wayback Machine and you can find these. I went back and I found screenshots of some of the niche blogs. I'm actually embarrassed to even show these to you guys. But I had a garden lighting blog where I shared my wonderful expertise on garden lighting. I had no garden lighting going on at the house. The solarpoolcover.com. Now that's great, you know, all about the reasons for the solar pool cover. Had no pool. Indoor fireplaces. Talked about indoor fireplaces. And I had an electric fireplace in my house. And then my favorite of all, I don't know if you can see that from the back of the room, but I built a site on Ladybug birthday party supplies. And here's one of the blog posts, choosing the right Ladybug birthday party supplies. Here's the reality. About 6 months into it, I was starting to dread my work. And here's something I discovered. Money will never fill your purpose bucket. Each of us have a purpose bucket. We want to make an impact. We want to make a difference. We want to leave a legacy. And me hiding behind my online entrepreneurial adventure and feeling like all I was doing was tricking people into click on ads. And honestly, if the articles were great, maybe I could say it was making impact, but they were terrible. And I figured that out 6 months in, and I said, I'm done with this. I actually sold those niche sites. I said, here's what I'm making on this one, this one, this one. I don't want them. I got rid of them. Here's what you should do instead. If it's not about following money, I believe it's about passion. And passion is what you love to learn and do that shows your talents. What is it? What is it for you? Jonathan Mean has a great quote, and it's, what's your no-end path? What is that thing that you can learn about and share and learn about and share and learn about and share that never grows old for you? You know, what is it what sections in the bookstore do you like to visit? Which podcast topics do you like to search for? In a conversation, what topics do you gravitate towards? Those are the hints to your real passions. Here's saying number 2. I don't have what it takes. And you know what? This doesn't go away. We often think that this is just something beginners struggle with. I struggled with this year. And I've been at it since 2009. And I've had 2 podcasts since 2012. And this started dominating me for a period of time. I saw some hands go up on podcast movement. Let me see again those that were at the podcast movement. Okay. I was there too. It was an amazing event. It was awesome. Now, I'm a blogger who podcasts, but podcasting is an important vehicle for me. And to be around these people who had such knowledge and expertise, and I'm just writing stuff down going, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Oh man, this makes this look terrible of what I'm doing. I got to change that. I got to stop doing that. And you know what happened? And it was had nothing to do with the podcast movement. I did not publish a single episode for 3 weeks after I came home. I began to doubt myself. Even though I had over 90 episodes, I think 100 episodes on one, and over 70 episodes on the second podcast. Well, what was going on? Had nothing to do with the podcast movement. Had everything to do with my mindset. In fact, I had people that were emailing me saying, hey, where's a new podcast? Does that happen to anybody in here? That's like the terrible thing to happen is when you have people emailing you saying, are you doing this podcast anymore? It's like, okay, I sat down and I said, what is the deal? What's going on? And this is what I wrote down. Podcasting is not about podcasting. It's a vehicle for delivering a message that people want or need. I got stuck up in podcast land in my mind. All the equipment, the things that I had, and those are great. You're going to learn about some of those today, and it's awesome. Technology is amazing. I don't want to undervalue that. But you can have all the equipment in the world, and if your head's not right, and you're doubting, and you don't think that you have what it takes, then you're not going to step forward. And I had to remind myself, this is a vehicle for delivering a message that people want or need. And so here's the answer. The answer is confidence. But you see, when we say, I don't have what it takes, what we're really doing is placing the emphasis on us. But confidence is the deep belief that your message is needed in the world. That what you have to say might be able to change someone's day, change someone's week, or change someone's world. And when you place the focus, instead of being on you and what you lack, and you place it on the fact that this could change someone's day, this could change someone's world, the focus becomes on them and not about you. There's a great story about a trapeze artist, a famous trapeze artist, and he was working with some students. And one particular student was really struggling. He was having a hard time. He wasn't performing the routine. He was giving up. And he kept saying the words, I can't, I can't, I can't. And the master finally looked at him and said, but you can. And I'm going to tell you how. Throw your heart over the bar and the rest will follow. You see, for a long time, I was dabbling in what I was doing. I wanted results without the work. I wanted a harvest without doing any serious planting. I wanted to know that that thing that I was going to do was going to work before I put my time and energy investment into it. And the truth is, I needed to just throw my heart over the bar and go for it. And so my question for you is, how would your situation be different a year from now if you decided to fully go for it? How would it be different if you decided, you know what, I'm all in, I'm moving forward with abandon? Here's number 3. And I've heard this one a lot. I've said it too. I'm too busy. I just don't have enough time. We've all said that. We've all felt that, right? I know I have. And in 2010, going into 2011, I began to get at this place where I was earning income, getting close to what the income that I was earning at my day job. And I was an executive recruiter, and that's what I did by day. And then I started this career coaching blog on the side, and I was beginning to earn income, and it was starting to equal out, and I was starting to feel the pressure of where to spend my time. And how am I going to spend time doing that when I have a day job that's still important for me to do? Then I read a quote from Stephen Pressfield that said, "How would you behave if you were the best in the world at what you do?" I went, oh man, I can't use that. I don't have time. Because the best in the world don't say, I don't have time. I don't have what it takes. That's not the way they think. Their mindset's different. And so I wrote down 4 words that governed me that day forward. Work for yourself first. The only logical time that I thought that I could carve out was 5 to 7 a.m. And for the longest time, I told myself, you're not a morning person. You're not a morning person. That was, I have 2 kids at home, and once they wake up, it's all about trying to wrestle them and get them out the door, and then they get home, and it's the t-ball games, and it's the basketball games, and it's the soccer games, and I love all that. Don't get me wrong, but in that space, in that craziness, what I wanted to do, my passion, was always left on the back burner. And so if I was the best in the world at what I did, I told myself 5 to 7 a.m. It's actually when I started drinking coffee. I never drank coffee my whole life. And for the first 6 months, I hated it. But I loved the buzz that it gave me that helped me to wake up. Here's the thing. Here's what I discovered at 5 a.m. I don't have an interest in looking at Facebook at 5 a.m. I don't have someone calling me. I don't have anybody knocking on my home office door. Because for me, 5 to 7 a.m. was totally interrupted time. And when I dedicated myself to that and I just made it a priority, you know what happened? I developed something called consistency. Because consistency is so powerful. It's the faith that showing up regularly will create momentum. And I suddenly carved out 10 hours, and it was a holy time for me. This is the time that I am going to do this. And so I would challenge you, if you're feeling that, I don't have the time, I'm too busy, maybe it's not 5 to 7 a.m. Pat Flynn, he's a crazy guy, does his work at night. I tried to do that, and I was doing my podcast episode, and even though I've got a pretty decent sized house, and my kids are kind of on the other side of the house, I was trying to podcast at 11:30 a.m., and then I listened back to my podcast, and it was like, welcome to the podcast show. Today I'm going, because it was 11 o'clock, I felt like I couldn't be, hey, welcome to the podcast, But anyway, so choose whatever time works for you. 5 to 7 a.m. works for me. Here's saying 4. If this works, I'll be an instant success. And the challenge is we see people who look like, in some regards, it's happening quicker and quicker around us. Just talking to a guy yesterday. Phenomenal story. The guy has moved very quickly. And so we see those, and we begin to see that these are the this is how it is, and this is what I need. This is what I need to move myself forward. But what I discovered is it's much more of, like Michael Hyatt said, he said, success is not home runs. It's a bunch of singles and doubles. And when we understand that it's a bunch of singles and doubles, and that every single podcast episode is like laying another brick in the foundation of a business or something that we want to create, we have the right mindset. We're in it for the long haul. Earlier back in June, might have been a little bit earlier than that, I got an email from John Lee Dumas, and he said, I want to interview you for Entrepreneur on Fire. My first thing is I wanted to reply back and said, no, I want to interview you. That's actually what I told him, and he interviewed me first, and then actually I think I interviewed him first. We had like an hour, so we swapped interviews. And right before I started interviewing him, you know what he said? He goes, hey, Jonathan. He said, I figured out something cool today. I said, what is it? He goes, did you know that your podcast, he was talking about one because I have two. He said, your podcast and Entrepreneur on Fire started the very same day. I said, John, that is the most discouraging news you could have ever told me. I said, you are at episode 700, and this is what I told him. I said, I'm at episode 70. And you know what he said to me? He said, Jonathan, he goes, this thing is a marathon. It's not a sprint. I said, you're exactly right. And see, something beautiful happens when we start seeing what we're doing as a marathon. We begin to enjoy the journey instead of trying to get to the destination. There's a great quote from Peter Drucker that I love, and I just passed right past him. We tend to overestimate the short term, and we underestimate the long term. And that's what happens. If we do those first few episodes and we don't get any feedback, oh, this is not going to work. No one wants to listen to this. You know what? Every single blogger, full-time blogger, and every single full-time podcaster started off in obscurity for a while. And somehow they had the mindset to just be bullheaded and push past it anyway. They kept recording episodes when they didn't get feedback. They kept publishing blog posts when they didn't get any comments. They kept publishing more blog posts when they didn't get any shares on social media. They blogged and they podcasted in total obscurity. Every single one of them. Here's what we need. We need patience. It's the ability to value the long term over the short term. My son, he's 10, but when he was in 3rd grade, I live in Jacksonville, just a couple hours north of here, and one of the bad things about Florida is that all of the playgrounds at the schools are sand. It's like going to the beach every day. The problem is my kids don't play in the sand at recess time without shoes. They're out there with their shoes. So my son would come home with sand in his shoes, and he would come into the house, pull them off, and sand everywhere in the house. My wife wasn't happy about that. So one day she grabbed a sand pail, stuck it at the door of the garage, and said, before you come in here, you have to dump the sand in the sand pail. And so every day he would take his shoes off, doom, doom, doom. Sometimes there was a little bit of sand, sometimes there was a lot of sand, but he did that day after day after day. I kind of ignored the sand pail. And then towards the end of the school year, you ever done one of those things where you just kind of take a double take, a look back? That sand pail was completely full. I went, how did that happen? You know what happened? A little bit at a time. And when you and I keep moving forward with our podcasts, with our blogs, we're going to look back and go, wow, look at all this that I've done, because we need to underestimate the long term. All right, last one, saying number 5. I don't know how to do this. I'm too technically challenged. This is a big one. Technology is constantly changing. It's coming. In fact, Sean over here, me and you were at a conference in Denver, and there was a lady at lunchtime. She was sitting all by herself, and literally she had tears down her face. I'm like, what's going on? And Sean sat down and spent time with her. And then he asked me to come and sit down with her. And here she was learning all this stuff at this conference. And she said, I can't even figure out, for the last week, I've been trying to figure out how to get an opt-in form on my blog. And I can't even do that. I mean, she was at total despair, wasn't she? And I sat down with her and I said, listen, technology is hard for all of us. I don't know how to say this, but it doesn't go away. I mean, I did a webinar, for those of you that know Jeff Goins, I did a webinar with Jeff Goins and I said, hey, I'll handle the technology, don't worry about it, let's jump on there. Complete fail. I tried to, it did not work. I made sure I had backups, the backups didn't work. I mean, we had, lots of people sign up for it and we're sitting there talking and I could see that we had 10 people watching us. And I'm thinking, this is a complete waste of time. But you know what? Here's what I've discovered. The answer is to have resilience. The expectation that everything is solvable. See, when you say everything is solvable, everything is solvable, like Marie Forleo says, everything's figure-outable. And when you have that belief, it's going to help you. Here's the irony. You know what's funny? I'm writing a book, actually a book called The 15 Success Traits of Pro Bloggers, and one of my chapters is on resilience. And it just so happened that, this was a couple months ago, both of my blogs, the hosting provider I used, was completely down. And it was down for 48 hours. Now, for somebody like me, that's my full-time income, that's where I get I grow my audience. I had all these emails. I can't access my courses I've purchased. It was complete chaos for me. And you know what I did? I sat down, opened up Scrivener, which I'm writing my book in, and the chapter that was time for me to write was on resilience. So you know what I did? I wrote that day and that whole entire day writing about resilience when my whole world was shut down. How do you do that? You have the mindset that everything is solvable. Here's the reality. I'm not telling you it's going to be easy. I'm telling you it's going to be worth it. That was the message that I was trying to deliver that day to this lady who was discouraged. Listen, it's not going to be easy. For me to try to code it and say technology is going to be easy, it's not. There's times where it's going to be hard. But it is going to be worth it. A couple months back, I was in Tennessee, and I was having a conversation with this guy, and he told me something that literally stopped me in my tracks. And I dwelled on it for 2 weeks after that. And in some ways, I still haven't been able to shake it. He said, do you realize that we are the first generation in human history to experience something? I'm like, you got my ears. What are you talking about? We're the first generation in human history to experience something? He said, yeah. And he told me 2 words. We're the first generation in human history to leave a digital legacy. In other words, what you record, your podcast, what you write on your blog post, your tweets, your social media, all that information that's trying to help people and make a difference in someone's life, when you're gone, they're still there. They're still there to make an impact. If you wanted a concrete example, we lost one of my personal heroes a couple years ago, and that was Zig Ziglar. Do you know, and they just revived the Ziglar Show podcast a couple weeks ago, but I talked with Tom and with Kevin Miller, who's reviving this podcast. You know what they told me? They have not published a single new episode since May of 2013. It's been 18 months. And they were still averaging 100,000 downloads a month on the podcast. Every day, people were driving to work, listening to Zig Ziglar's voice inspire them that day. And every day they were coming home, and 100,000 people a month were being encouraged by his message. And so it's simple today. You're going to learn a lot of cool things, and I'm going to be right here taking notes with every one of you. But you need to understand that you have a gift, and your gift is needed in the world. That you have a message, and your message is needed in the world. And you have an opportunity. In this room, we have an opportunity to create a digital legacy that can help others beyond what we're doing today. Thanks.